everyone. So we are here again with Dr. Adityanjee with an exciting topic of discussion. The topic of today's discussion is India's foreign policy doctrine. Our distinguished speaker today is Dr. Adityanjee. He is the President of Council for Strategic Affairs. You can visit his website, the Council for Strategic Affairs.org, to learn more about his organization. Now coming to the topic, you have seen that India's foreign policy has undergone a significant redefinition in recent years. The shift is marked by the departure from the traditional alliances to a more dynamic approach based on our strategic partnership, active participation in global organizations, and a focus on economic diplomacy. This recalibration reflects India's adaptation to the evolving global landscape, positioning the country as a key player on the international stage. So stay tuned with us for more insight into the nuances of this transformative journey. So Dr. Adityanjee, welcome to our platform once again.
Thank you very much indeed, Hari Prakashji, for inviting me on your platform, and I'm pleased to be here, delighted to be here.
So nice of you, sir. So with this background, I am coming to you with my first question. What's your comment on India's redefining of foreign policy?
See, no nation's foreign policy remains static. In fact, if it remains static, it shows inherent deficiencies. History never ceases. International affairs keep on changing. Geopolitical scenarios keep on changing. And I think foreign policy of a nation has to be reflective of contemporary situation rather than the past. So from 1947, India adopted a policy of quote-unquote non-alignment, and over the years it appeared ostensibly that non-alignment was essentially anti-imperialism and anti-Westernism, and India was coming closer to the Soviet Union as a partner. India never had actually formal alliances with any of the blocs, military blocs, but there was this perception that non-alignment is essentially becoming anti-US, anti-West, anti-imperialistic, and pro-Soviet Union foreign policy, to the extent that some people said that India has become almost a client state of the Soviet Union. Whatever the truth in that, there were corrective measures taken. From non-alignment, we went into phase of genuine non-alignment. And then we went into now a mode of pluri-alignment or multi-alignment. But there has been a rethinking in India's foreign policy postures as well as doctrines. Significant changes have happened in last 4 or 5 years since the current foreign minister took over. And at this point in time, if you look at Ministry of External Affairs website, it says that India's foreign policy is 4-pronged. Number 1 is to avoid any traditional and non-traditional threats to India. Second is to create an external environment that India's inclusive growth is sustained down to the bottom. Number 3 is protecting India internationally, giving it voice on international platforms so it can tackle with terrorism and other things. And the 4th important plank is actually protection of Indian diaspora. Indian diaspora is 20 plus million strong, and we have seen, whenever there's a conflict anywhere, Government of India takes a very active stance and has been able to bring back home expatriate Indians or students or workers who are working in foreign countries. So at least there's some coherence at this point in time. The current foreign minister or external affairs minister, S. Jaishankar, who used to be former foreign secretary, and this is the first transition that an IFS officer after becoming foreign secretary immediately became, foreign minister. There were previous instances as Natwar Singh became, foreign minister, but there was no continuation that, you resign or you retire and then next day you become foreign minister. So S. Jaishankar has become some intellectual coherence to India's foreign policy that is reflective of current government's priorities and policies. And in fact, that he wrote a book called India Way, that actually talks about how India's foreign policy philosophically should be handled. He has been talking about a diplomacy with Indian characteristics. So focusing on India's history, and in fact he has said that the greatest diplomats in the world were Lord Hanuman, Lord Krishna. And I think that is true. If you see, Lord Hanuman went as a diplomat to Sri Lanka to negotiate the release of Sita from Ravana. So he did go as a diplomat, and Lord Krishna did immense amount of diplomacy to avoid the war, to the extent of just making an offer that 5 villages to Kauravas be granted to Pandavas and they will forsake their claim. But even that was not acceptable to Kauravas, so the Mahabharata war was fought. Bottom line is that Indian foreign policy, its conduct and its doctrine is now resting on the pillars of foundations of Indian nation. They are no longer wedded into dogma. And if you look at foreign critiques and scholars, Professor Jeffelot, in reviewing S. Jaishankar's book, states that book has basically 3 basic arguments. One is Indian national trumps everything. India's interest will be supreme. It's not the alliances, it's not that we are pro this, anti this, as it used to happen. Till around 1996, 1997, we were anti-imperialist. We didn't care about our own interests. We always had to support the Arab nations, OIC. We always had to condemn Israel in the United Nations General Assembly. Those were ideological positions. Currently, we are not taking those kind of positions. We are not bounded by alliances. We are strictly looking at national interests. What are the national interests? Second issue is that there is, focus on transactional nature. India's foreign policy is becoming more transactional. And it should be. In international relations, reciprocity of relationship is very, very important. You cannot be, a giver all the time. India was always at receiving end because it did not believe in an assertive foreign policy, an assertive military diplomacy. Those things are changing. And thirdly, Indian foreign policy at this point in time is basically, focusing on its own national, brand or national sort of issues that are being projected upon. So India has come a long way over a period of time from an ideologically tinted and contaminated foreign policy which was not serving national interests a much more proactive, much more assertive, much more pro-India foreign policy. So I remember an important event in 1971. India's permanent representative in United Nations General Assembly, welcomed China's entry into United Nations and United Nations Security Council by thumping the table. Your arch enemy, your strategic rival, and you were rejoicing. I mean, what was that? That was ideologically driven foreign policy, not predicated upon national interest. Look at what China has done. Besides taking our territory, China has used every forum to deny India space in international forums, whether it is permanent membership of United Nations, whether it is membership of Nuclear Supplier Group, whether it is membership in APEC. China has always taken an anti-India viewpoint and has always supported India's adversary regionally and otherwise, whether in terms of terrorism, FATF, sanctions on Pakistan on terrorism. So slowly, but definitely India's policy is becoming more pro-India, much more transactional. It is not 100% transactional even now. And that is shown actually in our near abroad region, that we are still at the receiving end. We keep on giving them help, and we don't expect anything in return except for betrayal and deception and having in the back. You are seeing that in Maldives at this point in time. So, need to have much more realpolitik, much more nation-oriented foreign policy that does not take into consideration any doctrine, but pure nation.
Yes, you are right, sir. So with this, I am moving to the very important ally, this is considered today, America. So the relationship between India and America in the current global scenario is a mix of challenges and opportunities.
Yes.
There are common democratic values, provide a foundation for collaboration on global issues, but the trade imbalances and occasional differences on global matters pose challenges. However, there are opportunities. Opportunities lie in the technology, innovation, strategic partnership, with shared interest in areas like space exploration, cybersecurity. So, navigating these dynamics require a diplomatic fineness to ensure a mutual benefit and contribute to regional and global stability. Now the Americans are more interested in India's story. They display high importance to the partnership with India. So do you think that the change in American attitude is real?
So we have to see the trajectory of India-US relationship, and there have been various phases. From 1947 to at least till 1980 or 84 were characterized by antagonism, a lot of antagonism. And it was mutual. America held no wars. It was around, Ronald Reagan that there was some warming of India-US relationship when Rajiv Gandhi visited United States as Prime Minister. Ronald Reagan was charmed by his youth and his modern outlook because he could speak English very well and was a, trained pilot. So that impressed Ronald Reagan. And there was some, breaking of the ice. But actually, still, US foreign policy was held hostage to its Cold War mentality.
Right.
And only after dissolution of the Soviet Union, America removed its tinted glasses as perceiving India as a Soviet ally. So post 1991, when Soviet Union broke down, America's delusion about India being a Soviet ally, which India was not. We had just good relationship and partnership, but India was never an ally. That changed in 1991. The second phase lasted from 1991 to end of 2000, when Bill Clinton's tenure. And that was a very, very sad state. Bill Clinton was very hostile to India's issue in foreign policy. India's nuclear posture. Bill Clinton was very vocal in saying that we have to cap it, India's nuclear program, and reverse it. Multiple sanctions were placed on India, not just only in nuclear field, but also India's space program. Bill Clinton pressurized the residual state, Russian Federation of the Soviet Union, to deny cryogenic engine technology to India, delaying the Agni program. Bill Clinton was smitten by China and allowed unconditional WTO entry of China, which led to China usurping the World Trade Organization to build up its economic strength. I will say that since year 2000 onwards, irrespective of whether Democrat Party is in power in US or Republicans are in power in US, there has been an ascendance in US-India relations. That is number one. Number two is that still we see that whoever governs the White House decides the foreign policy of the United States. So under Democrat administrations, India's concerns are not taken significantly into consideration. I'll give you an example that although George W. Bush, despite his immaturity and his inexperience and his running into wars in Middle East, was very well disposed towards India. Comes Obama, who was very much hostile to India. In Obama's tenure, towards the end, India-US relationship nosedived about the arrest of an Indian diplomat, Devyani Khobragade, who was India's representative in United Nations. Clearly, she had diplomatic immunity on counter charges because one of her domestic help wanted to immigrate to the United States, use the US laws to claim that she was in bonded laborer situation kind of thing. And this diplomat was arrested and was subjected to body cavity surgery. And during the same time, a number of Indian diplomats were, maltreated at US airports. It did happen. In fact, India's ambassador to the United States, Meera Shankar, despite being a top diplomat, was patted down on one of the airports because she was wearing a sari. Hardeep Singh Puri, who is now the Union Minister, was asked to remove his turban. Other Indian Sikh diplomats were asked to remove their turban at US airports. So there was a lot of insensitivity. And that was actually creating problems in the bilateral relationship. During Trump's time, there was some improvement in relationship, and at this point in time, although the relationship is improving, but there are issues. And these issues are created by Democrat Party establishment because sometimes they take anti-Indian. You might have seen recent report of leaked report in Financial Times that FBI had prevented a plot of assassination of Patwan Singh Pannu by India's agents.
Yeah.
So they keep on doing things, although professing that the relationship is getting better, India is an ally. US policy towards India will remain transactional. They need India's help in containing China. And they identified that in 2005. In March 2005, Condoleezza Rice, who used to be initially the National Security Advisor in the first term of George W. Bush, and in second term became the US Secretary of State. In March of 2005, she went on record to say that one of the priorities of United States is to make India a global power. Clearly, it is not altruism. The United States used China to contain and break Soviet Union. For the last 15 to 20 years, the United States is working with India, trying to promote India as a counterbalance to China. So it's part of their global theme. And the relationship is transactional. It does not mean India is a US ally or US is an Indian ally. But they will use India for quote-unquote low-end security challenges. Things like peacekeeping operations, rescue and search operations, help during pandemics, those kind of things. And leave hardcore fighting to American forces. So in that sense, yes, both are democratic countries. Both have some harmonization of interests. India is never going to be an ally of any superpower, whether that is the United States, Soviet Union, Russian Federation, or China. India will have case-by-case basis partnership, economic partnership or strategic partnership, but India will never be an ally of any country because that is not what India believes in. So yes, there is some improvement in relationships. The trade has increased. In fact, US is India's largest trading partner at this point in time, displacing China. And luckily, the trade is in favor of India. And that is good. Our defense relationship is increasing. It is transactional because they want hard cash, they want equipment. In fact, at this point in time, United States is the third largest, ammunition and military equipment seller to India. The Russian Federation still holds 45% of our arms acquisitions. France is number 2 at 29%, and United States is at 11%. And in the last 15 years, India has spent more than $20 billion purchasing US equipment. So, if you see in these terms, there is definitely improvement. We are sitting on several multilaterals, several plurilateral mechanisms, whether that is Quad, whether that is I2U2, whether that is IMAC, whether that is Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. United States is engaging in it. That is true. But does the United States care for India? I would doubt it very much. United States has a stated aim to use India to contain China. And if we serve that useful purpose, that is well and good. And whenever it comes to real terms, United States will not hesitate to take action against India, as they have done in the past in economic field, putting trade sanctions, putting in India on intellectual property target as WTO, cases. There were 5 cases that have been, of course, mutually resolved at this point in time. The latest, U.S. posture, especially the Secretary of State, Lincoln, trying to put pressure on India about trying, to solve the issues with Canada. And this now leaked report about Indian agents being possibly trying to assassinate Patwan Singh Pannu and FBI, aborting that kind of thing. So these kind of things do not help a mature democracy to engage another mature democracy. There were other issues also, freedom of naval operations around India's west coast a couple of years ago, denial of, constituent parts of certain vaccines during COVID pandemic, denial of AstraZeneca 60 million dosages that United States had, and India had second wave of COVID. So again, it tells you that everything is not hunky-dory, things are qualified, American interests are supreme, so don't expect that Uncle Sam would be a benevolent benefactor of India. India has to earn its own.
So I have two new questions on my mind. Since the day the India has been independence and the relationship between the independent India and the Americans have been established, I think the signing of nuclear treaty between India and America has been seen as the highest point in the relationship between the two countries. Because
Which
signing of nuclear treaty I am talking about.
civil nuclear,
Yeah.
well, it was more hype than substance.
Mm-hmm.
At least that is my viewpoint.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the history that happened during the UPA government,
Yeah.
and initially there was a meeting between Dr. Manmohan Singh and George W. Bush. At that time, a half-page document was shared between the two. That half-page document was civil nuclear, agreement. But when it was brought forth in United States Congress, which is the parliament or the legislative body, it became 42-page long, highly restrictive, highly sanctioning document.
Yeah.
That put layers and layers of conditions.
Mm.
What was the result? Did India buy any nuclear reactors from America? We are talking about 6 nuclear units. G wanted to supply, but G became bankrupt. It was purchased by a Japanese conglomerate. What do you see on ground? Nothing concrete. But on the other hand, India had to take out, some of its nuclear reactors and dismantle them as conditions of that. India is still not a member of nuclear supplier group. So, yes, it led to optics and atmospherics, but in terms of concrete achievement, it did not help India a bit. In terms of furthering India's own nuclear program, and actually we were a little bit distracted from that because some of our uranium enrichment and plutonium plants had to be decommissioned. And that's a reality. And then we had to accept the, additional protocol of IAEA that calls for more intrusive inspections by IAEA inspectors. So, in concrete terms, the signing of civil nuclear agreement, paved the way for improved bilateral relationship. But in terms of helping India's nuclear program, I don't think it is.
Yeah. So do you think in future this agreement will be acting against India?
Well, India has already succumbed to the additional protocol and brought India's nuclear plants into IAEA inspection regime. So that is one. It placed certain constraints, let's say, on the independent and indigenous nature of India's nuclear program.
So that is the gain by Americans actually.
Well, they want to have quote unquote layers of commitments. You will dangle a carrot and then put so many webs around that. That's the way the games are played by superpowers.
So you have already answered my second question. My third question actually, how do you see this partnership? Now I am coming to my fourth question. India is actually more interested in defense supply from America without giving any assurance for the long-standing American demand for operational collaboration and land resources. So how much do you think India will succeed in collaboration with America?
So, yes, there are improvements and India wants latest technology. Will United States part with it? Answer is no. India will always be offered one generation behind technology, whether that is airplane engines or anything else. United States is a good shopkeeper. They know how to make profits. United States actually leads in global arms bazaar. They are the largest sellers of armed ammunitions and military equipment all over the world to, in fact, adversaries. While they sell us, some transport planes and, some airplane engines, simultaneously they gave a package, quote unquote, sustainment package for Pakistan's F-16. So you see the game there.
Yeah, right.
They get it from both hands.
Yeah.
So United States remains the largest equipment and arms seller all over the world. A military industrial complex will continue to sell, including to India, but they will always make sure that India does not get the latest technology. One of the long-term aims of United States has to, get some bases in India, which India has not agreed to. And I don't think any government in India will agree to stationing of US bases. United States wanted India to join the quote-unquote coalition of the willing in Afghanistan. India did not. That time Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the prime minister. So each country has to define its interests very narrowly and see how you can harmonize the interests without affecting the national sovereignty and national interests. So, you have to have this diplomatic dance being played. And you have to engage with the reigning superpower, which is going to remain as a superpower because it is in our interest. Yes, we also want some, pressure on the rising hegemon, which is China. That is our concern. And yes, United States is concerned that rising hegemon is contained. So we may not openly say that collaboration between US and India is China specific. But in real terms, that is the driving force. United States does not say that there are no zero-sum games, and India will never accept that, agree to that our relationship with United States is because of a third country, in this case China.
So we are short of time here. So we are going to end this session, and in the next session we are going to shift our focus to China. So what kind of relationship we have? So just we are getting a little break here, and then we will come back again.
Okay, thank you very much, Hari Prakashji. Pleasure to be here on your platform.
I'll be soon joining again. Thank you, sir. Thank you, viewers. Please be tuned. We are coming again.